Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session as part of Pensions Awareness Week. My name is Fergal McKenna, and I'm Head of Corporate at MoneyCube.ie. And today we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about topping up your pensions for public servants. Just a very quick thank you to Iconic for giving us the lovely space that we're speaking in today, and to Leah for supporting the conversation that we're going to have today as well. We're joined today by James Skean. James is here with Trustee and Pension Support Services, and James has over 40 years experience in the industry. So thank you very much, James, for
No problem, Charlie. Good to be here.
So I guess in broad terms, could you maybe give us an insight as to how public sector pensions work, James?
Sure, yeah. I suppose the first thing to bear in mind about public sector pensions is that they are guaranteed. So they operate on a defined benefit basis. There's no investment risk involved, and it's the government that is providing the guarantee. So it's one of the big advantages of working in the public sector. In terms of the benefits provided, it's unusual in that compared to a private sector defined benefit scheme, where you are build up a pension and then you have the option of exchanging part of your pension for a lump sum. In the public sector, the retirement lump sum and the retirement pension build up separately. Okay,
right.
So they're the two main benefits. There's also lump sum gratuity payable on death, and finally there's also a spouses and children's pension. Now, the different schemes will have slight variations, but in broad terms, they're the type of benefits that are provided.
Okay, great. And is it the same benefits for all employees?
No, there's a couple of differences. What's happened is that over the years, the government have reviewed and refined the pension that they offer. So new employees, depending on the date you actually start, may be in a different scheme or will be in a different scheme. And really there's three main schemes out there. There's those who joined the public sector before 1995, those who joined before 2013, and then more recently those who joined since 2013.
Right, so classic pensions, it's not always that simple.
No, it's pretty complicated.
Yeah. I mean, can you give us an idea as to what the difference between the schemes are?
Yeah, okay, so I suppose as a general comment, the pensions have disimproved gradually over time. So the people that have the best type of pension are those who are there the longest, those who are there before 1995. Although interestingly, they play class either B, C or D PRSI. So as a result of that, they don't actually qualify for the state contributory pension. So their only pension will come from their public sector employer scheme. But having said that, they will, when they retire, get a pension. If they've 40-year service, the maximum pension they get is 50% of their salary, and a lump sum of 1.5 times their final salary, and that is their salary at retirement.
Okay, and for those joiners then after 1995?
Okay, so I suppose the main change after 1995 was integration. So on the one hand, new employees since 1995 pay Class A PRSI and will qualify for the state contributory pension. So what the government did was, in relation to the public sector pension, is that the idea is that, look, you're already getting the state pension, so that will look after a certain part of your salary. So your pension from the public sector employer will only deal with an excess salary. So the state pension looks after a certain amount of salary, and the public sector pension will look after the balance.
Okay, right. And then I think you mentioned that there's a third leg that people after 2013.
And 2013 probably has seen the biggest change of all. Okay, so like post-1995 employees, the pension is integrated, but instead of being based on final salary, it's actually based on a career average. So what happens is, for each year, you will earn a certain amount of pension and a certain amount of lump sum, but it's based on your salary in that year. It will be increased in line with inflation, but it's not geared to your final salary. So that's a very significant change. The other change that's happened is that when your pension is in the course of payment, it will increase in line with inflation. Whereas for previous employees, their pension has and will continue to be linked to individual salary increases that are occupying the same grade as you did.
Okay.
So two very significant changes.
Yeah, and clearly inflation is a big topic being discussed
Absolutely.
at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. And what about the retirement ages? Are different things there?
They vary again. Now, slightly different. For people up to 2004, okay, they can normally retire at any time between age 60 and 65. So there's no actuarial reduction. From 2004 onwards, the retirement age is 65. And then for 2013 onwards, what they've done is they've actually linked the retirement age with the state pension. So currently that is 66. It was due to go to 67, but as we all know, that decision to introduce the 67 age has been postponed by the government.
Right, okay.
So the other thing I should mention, that's for want of a better word, the vast bulk of public sector employees. But there's always been special provision for some occupations, in particular members of the Defence Forces,
Yep.
policemen and full-time firefighters. And they have retirement dates as early as 55 and 50, depending on the specific occupation.
Okay. And then what do public sector employees pay?
Okay, so again, if you take, for instance, the 2013 scheme, typically the normal contribution that they will pay is about 3.3%. So people in the previous schemes will pay a higher amount. The fairly standard contribution is 5% pension contribution and a 1.5% contribution towards the spouses and children's pension.
Okay. And is there, I'd heard about another deduction that public service people have to pay as well.
Yeah, I suppose stemming from the financial crisis, there was a temporary pension deduction introduced by the government, and that was on all their income, not just their pensionable income. Now that was done away with around 2018, 2019, but at the same time a new ongoing permanent extra deduction was introduced called ASC, or Additional Superannuation Contribution. Again, depending on what scheme you're in, but typically there's nothing paid on the first 34,500 of salary. Over and above that, for 2013 onwards people, they will pay about 3.5% depending on their salary, above 34,500. For people in the earlier schemes, they pay a lot more, and it just reflects the fact that the benefits are so much better. And they will pay an extra 10 or 10.5% of their salary.
Okay, I mean, those seem generous. I mean, is there a need for people out there to think about topping up their pensions? Definitely.
I suppose the only person that probably doesn't need to pay an AVC is somebody with 40 years service in the pre-1995 scheme. But even those probably will have some earnings that aren't pensionable, like overtime payments, etc., etc. So there's probably scope for everybody. But it's really the post-1995 people that there's actually considerable scope for them to pay or to top up their pension in some way. So, for instance, they could have short service. Also, from 1995 onwards, their full salary isn't being pensioned. Okay, so the salary that isn't being pensioned by the public sector scheme, they can top that up themselves. The life cover gratuity, for instance, the maximum you can have is 4 times salary, whereas the gratuity for most public sector employees is only 1 to 1.5 times salary. So there's lots of different ways that pensions can be topped up. Okay,
great. Well, look, that's great context into the background, and I guess most people tuning in today probably want to understand or are considering topping up their pensions. So how would they actually go about topping up the benefits?
Okay, so there's 3 different ways. Okay, as ever, it's not a simple answer. There's a thing called added years. There's an additional voluntary contribution, and there's also an additional voluntary contribution PRSA.
Right.
So there's 3 different ways,
okay.
And depending on the individual, etc., it's not automatic that one is the best or the most suitable for them.
Okay, right. And James, I'm going to ask you maybe if we could talk about, let's start with the added years.
Okay, so added years are unique to the public sector, and it's suitable for somebody who is risk averse and is looking for security and guarantees, because added years works on a defined benefit basis. So what the individual does is they purchase an extra year or years. Okay,
yeah.
So if you have, say, 27 years and you add 1 more year, you now have an entitlement to 28 years pension and 28 years retirement lump sum. The disadvantage is that it's inflexible, because you have to buy a year with all the attachments. Okay,
yeah.
So for instance, if you might just want to, say, increase the lump sum to the maximum allowable, but you're happy with your pension, you can't do that with added years. Likewise, if you want to, say, put in €50 a week or €50 a month or whatever, you can't do that unless it is the amount needed to purchase a specific year. So good and guaranteed, but quite inflexible. And also, the other point as well is that you end up with extra pension, which in itself is good, but if you go down the AVC or the AVC PRSA route, it'll give you more options at retirement.
Okay. So some good and bad things there. So what's the alternatives, I guess?
Okay, so the alternative is that what you get is virtually every public sector employer operates an AVC facility. Okay, the beauty of an AVC facility is that the deductions are taken from your salary or wages every week, fortnight or month, and you get tax relief at source. So convenience is the big selling point. I suppose the disadvantage of the AVC is that you are kind of stuck with the insurance company that's administering the AVC scheme. There's no choice. Okay. Now, there will be a choice of funds from that insurance company, but it's only from insurance company A. You don't have the choice of the whole market.
Right, okay.
A particular advantage of both AVCs and AVC PRSAs, though, is that when you come to retire, you can invest in an approved retirement fund. So, in a way, public sector employees have the best of both worlds. You know, you have the guaranteed pension on the one hand, and then with your AVC fund, you can invest in an approved retirement fund, and subject to some conditions, but you can dip in and take out withdrawals from that fund in retirement. And usually what people do is they will do it to pay for holidays, changing the car, doing up the house, things like that. So right. It's quite good that you get flexibility, which you also get with the AVC PRSA.
Okay, so a couple of things to think about there, James, and like, clearly you know this inside out. I mean, you know, we've probably run through that. You made it all sound very, very simple, but maybe if you could, if we were to sum it all up, what would you say to a public sector employee thinking about
Okay, just the last thing I'd say is I just want to talk briefly about AVC PRSAs. So that's the alternative to AVC.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, sure.
So AVC and AVC PRSAs work on a defined contribution basis. There's no guarantee, there's no defined benefit. What the disadvantage of the AVC PRSA is you have to go and organise the tax relief yourself. You have to pay the money out of your own bank account on a direct debit basis. Where it scores over the AVC is that the individual, and I would stress they should always get advice, can choose what investment manager or insurance company they want to go with. They are not stuck with the selected insurance company that the AVC scheme has. So there's pros and cons attached to each. And I'd say probably the higher the salary, the more likely it is that an individual will lean towards an AVC PRSA, because it gives you that flexibility to pick your own investment manager.
Okay, yeah.
So I suppose in terms of advice to people in the public sector, you know, like there's, and in a way for a short session like this, you can only really touch on the main points.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent on an individual in the public sector to find out about their pension. You know, what pension scheme they're in. And to be fair to the public sector, I was actually looking at what's called the simple pension scheme. That's the one from 2013 onwards. And the booklets are very good. They give practical examples of what contribution you're going to pay, how the tax relief works, and they then convert it to whether you're paying monthly or paid monthly, fortnightly or weekly. So the information is there.
Yes.
But what you need to do is find out what it is. What is the likely pension you're going to get when you retire? When are you going to retire? And then compare that with your own kind of plans and objectives. And once you've done that, there is going to be a gap, inevitably. So you need to go and get advice and work out which of the three schemes best suits you. Added years for the risk adverse and guarantees. AVC, primarily for the convenience of a deduction from salary. And AVC PRSA, giving you the flexibility to pick your own investment manager. But for both AVCs and AVC PRSAs, you get access to the ARF option.
Great. Thanks, James. And I agree with you. There is plenty of information out there, and I think that one thing that people find with pensions is sometimes they're overwhelmed with the amount of information. So I know that the team at Pensions Awareness Week are keen to, I guess, provide a bit of a platform for people that
Sure.
don't know where to turn to get that information. So we'll make sure to put something on the website that points to the information that you're talking about. And by all means, if anybody has any information, feel free to contact Pensions Awareness Week at hello@pensionsawarenessweek and .ie, and we will make sure to come back to you with any queries, with any answers to those queries. So, look, James, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. You're clearly someone who knows a lot about this topic.
40 years of learning.
Yeah. And really appreciate your time today talking about this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Fergal.